Stay in the back, you're embarrassing, Brad hissed under his breath, his lips barely moving as he leaned closer. The fake smile plastered across his face for the rest of the family didn't quite reach his eyes. Seriously, Linda. Just, don't ruin the photos this year. I stood there clutching the homemade apple pie I'd baked that morning, wearing the same navy blue dress I'd worn to 3 different family events. My hands trembled slightly, but I kept my smile soft and steady. The reunion was already in full swing, crystal wine glasses clinking, shrill laughter bouncing off the walls of the rented banquet hall, and the hum of shallow small talk in every corner. Brad, of course, was in the center of it all, handsome, confident, dripping in designer everything. His tailored suit hugged his gym-toned frame, and his Rolex sparkled every time he lifted his wine glass. To the family, he was golden. Senior Vice President, the future CEO, our pride and joy, they always said. Me? I was just Linda. Oh, Linda's still finding her path. She's such a sweet girl. Always has her nose in a book or some online thing. Translation? Nobody knew, or cared, what I actually did for a living. Brad didn't even bother hiding his smirk as I moved toward the dessert table like I was being dismissed by a maitre d'. I overheard Aunt Patty whisper to another relative, "She always brings something homemade, bless her heart." You'd think she'd at least buy something fancy once in a while. The worst part? I'd expected this. I was used to it. Every reunion was the same, Brad shining under a spotlight while I hovered around the edges like some distant cousin twice removed. But this time, the game was about to change. Just as I quietly slid my pie next to a glossy bakery-bought cheesecake, the double doors of the hall swung open. The clinking and chattering came to an abrupt pause. Everyone turned to look. A tall, striking woman in a sleek gray power suit stepped into the room. Her heels clicked confidently as she walked. Next to her was a sharply dressed man carrying a leather folder. All eyes were on them. Brad's face shifted. He straightened his tie, brushed his hair back, and walked forward with the smug grin of someone used to being the favorite. "Cynthia," he said with enthusiasm, "I didn't know you were coming." The woman raised her hand politely but didn't smile. Instead, she scanned the room, her gaze landing right on me. Then she said something no one expected. "Ladies and gentlemen, meet your new company owner." She turned slightly and pointed, straight at me. A silence dropped over the room so heavy it was almost physical. Brad's mouth fell open. I stood still, watching a sea of shocked faces turn my way. The pie in my hands had never felt lighter. And that was just the beginning. Growing up, I never really understood why I felt like an outsider in my own family. It wasn't like I was rebellious or difficult. I didn't talk back, didn't make waves. I was the quiet one, the one who always said, "I'm fine," even when I wasn't. My parents were good people, but they were old school. For them, success had a look, and it looked exactly like Brad. He was the quarterback, the straight-A student, the business school prodigy. Every holiday, every dinner table conversation, every phone call home somehow circled back to him. Brad's been promoted. Brad closed a big deal. Brad's boss said he's got real CEO potential. And me? Linda's still playing with her computer stuff. That computer stuff had a name, of course, software engineering, data systems, cloud management, but no one cared to ask. I'd taught myself to code when I was 15, not that anyone noticed. While Brad was being cheered on at football games, I was holed up in my bedroom, watching YouTube tutorials and solving tech puzzles online for fun. I even built a small app that helped local businesses with their inventory, free of charge. But to them, I was just Linda. The nice one. The one with potential, a word they used as a placeholder for not good enough. And Brad never missed a chance to remind me. At one reunion, I'd gotten excited about a startup I was working on. I tried to share it at the dinner table, even brought a little demo on my tablet. Brad took one look, chuckled, and said, "That's cute. You playing tech guru now?" Everyone laughed with him. I laughed too, but inside, I felt like my ribs were caving in. There were birthdays where he gave me a book on finding your purpose. One year, he gave me a mug that said, "World's okayest sister." He played it off as humor. "Lighten up, Linda," he'd always say. But I knew he meant it. It wasn't just Brad, though. It was the silence that followed whenever I spoke. The way no one asked about my life unless it had something to do with who I was dating or when I'd settled down. I'd stopped bringing up my work, even though, by 25, I'd already been working on back-end systems for companies 3 times the size of Brad's firm. I remember one Thanksgiving, I'd gotten a remote contract with a company in San Diego, a pretty big deal. When I told my mom, she smiled faintly and said, "That's nice, honey. But do you think it's stable? Maybe ask Brad for advice." Ask Brad. The golden boy with his shiny shoes and shallow charm. I never said it out loud, but somewhere deep down, I promised myself something that night. One day, they were going to see me. Not just as Linda, the girl with the pie. But as Linda, the one who built her own empire. And that day was already here. After that Thanksgiving, I stopped trying to explain myself. I didn't need their validation anymore. What I needed was space and silence. And I used both to build something no one in my family ever saw coming. I moved out of our small town in Ohio and rented a tiny apartment on the outskirts of Austin, Texas. Nothing fancy, just a desk, a decent internet connection, and more determination than I'd ever felt in my life. I kept my head down, saved every dime, and poured my soul into my passion, software systems for small to medium-sized businesses. It started small: inventory tracking tools, booking management, CRM solutions. I didn't even have a proper name for my business at first. Just Linda Tech, scribbled at the top of an Excel sheet. I worked 18-hour days, slept on a mattress on the floor, ate frozen meals, and didn't complain, not once. The hustle wasn't pretty. There were nights I cried from exhaustion. Days I doubted myself. I got scammed once by a fake investor. Lost a major client due to a server failure. But every failure taught me something. Every setback was fuel. Then one night, it clicked. I developed a software suite designed specifically for multi-location service businesses, hair salons, dentists, boutique gyms. No one else was doing it quite right. I took out a small loan, hired 2 freelancers, and launched my first real platform, FlowSuite. Within a year, 20 businesses signed up. Then 100. Word spread. I reinvested everything back into the company: better infrastructure, better talent, better branding. By the time I hit 30, FlowSuite had onboarded over 1,000 clients nationwide. Investors noticed. But I was cautious. I remembered Brad and all his business lingo, all his venture talk at family dinners. I didn't want that life, just empty titles and glass walls. I wanted freedom. Purpose. Control. So, I stayed private. Quietly scaled. Kept ownership. I partnered with a former Google developer and a brilliant Latina CFO who believed in the mission. Together, we built a business that made real change for real people. I had offices in Austin and Denver. A full-time team of 42. And just last quarter, we crossed 8 figures in annual revenue. But no one in my family knew. Not because I was hiding. I just stopped sharing. They never asked, so I never told. Until last month. Brad's company, Linton Holdings, was looking to upgrade its back-end systems. They needed an all-in-one cloud suite for logistics, customer management, and employee scheduling. Turns out, FlowSuite had everything they needed. They had no idea who owned it. My team handled the pitch. I watched quietly from behind the scenes. When they signed the final contract, it included a clause: full company acquisition. It was strategic. Quiet. Clean. And legal ownership? All mine. So when that moment came at the reunion, when Cynthia walked in and pointed at me, Brad wasn't just shocked. He was owned. For a moment, the air felt sucked out of the room. You could hear the clink of someone setting down their wineglass too fast, the shuffle of heels, a child asking, "What's a company owner?" before being hushed. Brad stood there frozen, his mouth slightly open, eyes darting between me and Cynthia, his CEO. The man who had spent years puffing up his chest at family events now looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. He opened his mouth to speak, then stopped. Then tried again. You're joking, right?" he stammered, forcing a chuckle that cracked halfway through. "Linda? She's not." "She is," Cynthia said, stepping beside me. "She's the new owner of Linton Holdings. Effective immediately. I'd suggest showing some respect." I didn't gloat. Didn't smile. I just looked him in the eye, steady, calm. "You bought my company?" Brad asked, voice barely above a whisper. "No, Brad," I said gently. "I acquired it." "There's a difference." Gasps. Audible ones. Even Uncle Jerry coughed into his drink and whispered, "Well, damn." "You're telling me you've been rich this whole time?" my aunt blurted, blinking like she'd missed a whole season of a show. I let out a breath. "Not rich. Just focused. I built something from the ground up. Quietly. While being told to stay in the background." Brad's face flushed red. He looked around the room, searching for support that just wasn't there. "I'm still the chief operating officer," he barked suddenly, as if clinging to some last piece of identity. Cynthia cleared her throat. "About that. Linda and I will be reviewing all executive roles this quarter. Including yours." He looked like he'd been slapped. My cousin Amanda, the same one who used to mock my clothes and call me Little Miss Spreadsheet, leaned over to her husband and whispered, not so quietly, "Maybe we should talk to Linda about that app idea you had." I didn't even acknowledge it. Brad took a few stumbling steps toward me. "Why didn't you say anything? Why keep this a secret?" I tilted my head. "You never asked, Brad. Remember last Christmas? You interrupted me to talk about your company's coffee machine upgrade." A few people chuckled. Brad didn't. "You waited for this moment," he said bitterly. "You planned this just to humiliate me." "No," I replied. "I planned it to free myself. The humiliation, that's just a side effect of truth." His shoulders sagged. For the first time in my life, Brad didn't look like the golden boy. He looked small. Like someone who realized too late that he'd underestimated the wrong person. I turned to Cynthia. "Can we go over the next steps tomorrow?" "Of course," she said, then turned to the crowd. "Everyone, please enjoy the rest of your evening. We have champagne coming out." The noise resumed slowly, awkwardly. Some people smiled at me. Others just stared. Brad walked away, stiff and silent. But I stood tall. I wasn't in the background anymore. As the buzz of the party carried on, laughter and clinking glasses blending like distant echoes, I drifted. Not physically, but in memory. Because behind that calm exterior, I was holding back years of pain. Years of being invisible. I remembered my 24th birthday. I baked my own cake, just a small chocolate one from a box. I brought it to the family barbecue, smiling, hoping someone would care. Brad showed up with his fiancée and a 6-tier bakery cake. Everyone swarmed him. My cake sat untouched. Hours later, my aunt tossed it, thinking it was store-bought trash. I didn't say a word. Then there was the time I got my first client, an online candle business that paid me $150 to build their booking site. I was ecstatic. I told my mom at dinner, eyes lit up. Brad chuckled. "A candle shop? Cute. I made that in an hour with stocks today." My mom didn't say anything. Just asked Brad to pass the salad. It wasn't just what they said. It was what they didn't. No one asked about my work. No one checked in. When I stopped attending reunions for a while, no one called to ask why. The message was clear: I didn't matter unless I was like them, loud, shiny, performative. I wasn't driven by revenge at first. I just wanted peace. But one night, one moment, changed everything. It was raining. I'd just gotten a rejection from a loan application. My landlord was raising rent. I sat on the floor, sobbing, laptop on my knees, wondering if I should just give up. Then I remembered something Brad had said years ago at another reunion, loud and laughing in front of everyone. Some people just aren't built to lead. And that's okay, every team needs a benchwarmer. They had laughed. I had laughed too, pretending it didn't sting. But in that quiet apartment, soaked in tears and desperation, those words echoed. And I whispered to myself, "You're not a benchwarmer. You just haven't been given the ball yet." That night, I vowed I'd never be small again. Never wait for someone to see me. I would make them see me. That became my fire. Not to show them, but to prove to myself that I could build something that couldn't be ignored. Every time I was dismissed, I used it. I transformed rejection into resolve, doubt into fuel. Every line of code, every sleepless night, every dollar earned, I was building more than a business. I was building a voice. And now, standing in that room, hearing my name whispered with awe instead of pity, I knew it had all been worth it. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted redemption. And I had it. The following Monday, I walked through the tall glass doors of Linton Holdings, not as a visitor or a forgotten relative, but as the owner. I wore a navy blue suit and simple heels, not flashy, not loud, just me. Confident, composed, and finally in the light. Cynthia met me in the lobby with a smile and a clipboard. "Everyone's waiting upstairs. You ready?" I nodded. "Let's do this." The boardroom was full. Executives, directors, even Brad, who looked like he hadn't slept since the reunion. His tie was crooked, and he didn't look at me when I entered. "Good morning," I said, scanning the room. "Let's get started." No one interrupted. Not like the old days. Not like family dinners. I opened with decisions I'd spent months preparing in silence. First, department budgets are being reviewed. We're investing more into product development and scaling back unnecessary marketing fluff. Cynthia and I will be personally overseeing this. Whispers. Second, there will be a reorganization of executive roles. Not based on politics or seniority, but performance. No one is guaranteed a seat anymore. You earn it. A few jaws clenched. Brad shifted in his chair. Third, we're launching the Elevate program. It's a mentorship initiative for underrepresented employees across all levels. I didn't have a mentor. But I'll be damned if the next Linda walks these halls feeling unseen. Silence. Then, slow claps. Not sarcastic. Real. Brad raised his hand. "I have a question." I raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead. What exactly is my role in this new structure?" His tone was flat, eyes narrowed. "You'll be evaluated like everyone else," I replied calmly. "We'll review performance, team feedback, and adaptability." "You mean I might lose my job?" he snapped. "I mean we're building something stronger. If you're part of that vision, great. If not..." I let the silence finish that sentence. Cynthia slid a folder in front of him. "These are your current performance metrics." Brad looked down. For the first time, he didn't fight. He just nodded. Meeting adjourned. Outside the boardroom, employees I'd never met before came up to shake my hand. "I've been here 8 years, one woman said. "First time I've ever seen a meeting led with that much clarity." Another whispered, "Thank you. You've already changed the tone around here." Later that day, I sat in my new office, floor-to-ceiling windows, city skyline, the hum of leadership all around me. I looked out and thought of all the times I felt like I didn't belong. All the reunions I was shoved to the back. All the moments I stayed quiet to keep the peace. No more. This was my seat now. And I wasn't giving it up. Not for family guilt. Not for fake politeness. Not for anyone who had ever called me embarrassing. The power had shifted, and I wasn't just part of the story anymore. I was the one writing it. The shift didn't happen overnight, but it happened fast enough to rattle the very foundation Brad had stood on his whole life. It started with murmurs at work. Brad had always been the golden boy of the office, confident, charming, and well-connected. But under pressure, cracks started showing. His numbers were weak, his team unmotivated, and once the protection of family influence was removed, people saw him clearly. And it wasn't flattering. He started missing deadlines. Blamed interns for sloppy reports. Snapped in meetings. The same man who used to walk down the hallway like he owned the place, now kept his head down and avoided eye contact. One morning, HR called him in for a formal performance review. He stormed out of the office 2 hours later, face pale, jaw tight. No one said a word. No one offered sympathy. And I didn't have to say anything. The walls were already closing in. A week later, I received an official resignation email from him. I need to explore other ventures, it read. Translation? He'd rather quit than be fired. But it wasn't just at work where the shift happened. It started bleeding into our family too. At the next family dinner, yes, I agreed to show up, mostly out of curiosity. I walked in and heads turned. Not in mockery or judgment, but with quiet awe. Uncle Marvin stood when I entered. Linda, good to see you. Your grandmother's been telling everyone about your success. Grandma smiled warmly. My girl owns a company now. Imagine that. For the first time, I sat at the center of the table. No one pushed me aside. No one hushed me. Brad was there too, quieter than I'd ever seen him. He barely touched his food. Halfway through dinner, he spoke. Linda, he started, voice unsure, I want to say congrats. And I mean it. You've done something big. Something I didn't think, well, I didn't see it coming. I looked at him, trying to decide what to feel. Pity? No. Satisfaction? A little. Peace? Surprisingly, yes. Thanks, Brad, I replied calmly. I didn't need you to see it coming. I just needed to see it myself. Later, Mom approached me in the kitchen while I was helping Grandma with the dishes. She touched my arm. Linda, I owe you an apology. We were wrong about so much. Her eyes were glassy. You deserved more from us. I'm sorry we didn't see you. I paused, then smiled. Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. She wasn't perfect. None of them were. But for the first time, they saw me as more than just the quiet cousin. I was no longer the girl in the background. I was the one they now looked to. And Brad? He had finally learned what it meant to lose something you never truly appreciated in the first place. This wasn't revenge through rage. It was revenge through rising. And nothing spoke louder than silence at a table where I once didn't have a seat. 6 months later, I stood on the rooftop of my office building. The city lights stretched endlessly, buzzing with life beneath me. Behind me, a celebration was underway, our company's best quarter yet. Champagne flowed, laughter echoed, and people from every department mingled like family. I stepped aside for a moment, letting the crisp evening breeze settle around me. This silence? This peace? I'd earned every second of it. From being shoved to the back row at family reunions to owning the company half my relatives bragged about but never truly understood, I'd walked a path filled with silence, doubt, and small humiliations that had once cut deeper than anyone knew. But not anymore. Boss, we're ready for your toast, Cynthia called behind me, holding up a glass. I turned and walked back in, heels clicking on the stone floor, every eye in the room landing on me, not out of obligation, but respect. I lifted my glass. Tonight isn't about numbers, I began, my voice steady. It's about stories. About the ones they told us growing up, the ones where we were always in the background, always the helper, never the hero. There were nods. Soft murmurs. A few misty eyes. Well, I say it's time we write new stories. Ones where the quiet cousin becomes the queen, the overlooked daughter becomes the owner, and the woman told to stay in the back. I paused, letting the moment breathe. Takes the front seat, and drives the whole damn bus. Laughter and cheers erupted, louder than I'd ever imagined possible. After the toast, as people returned to dancing and mingling, Brad walked over slowly. He looked humbled. I just wanted to say thank you, he said quietly. For what? I asked, raising an eyebrow. For not destroying me. You could have embarrassed me, fired me publicly, rubbed it in. I gave a soft smile. I didn't need to destroy you, Brad. I just needed to build myself. He nodded, swallowing hard. You did more than that. We clinked glasses. A while later, I went back to the edge of the rooftop and pulled out my phone. One message waited from Grandma. Proud of you, sweetheart. You showed them all, without ever raising your voice. I smiled. Before I left, I took one last look at the skyline, whispered a quiet thank you to the woman I used to be, the one who stood in the shadows and took it all, and walked back inside. Because this time, the spotlight was mine. And as I passed the grand glass doors of my building, a familiar security guard nodded. Leaving already, Ms. Carter? I grinned. Just getting started. And that, right there, was my story. No loud revenge. Just loud results. And the next time someone tells me to stay in the back, I'll smile and say, Sweetheart, I own the room you're trying to walk into.